Yeah, it's recording. Hare Krishna. Okay. Nama Om Vishnu Bhattaya Krishna Brushtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Puchaline Nivasisha Shanyavhari Pashtatar Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Maharaj Kishore, I'll ask you, perhaps you can lead us in the reading to begin with. And this purport is quite extensive. So what we might do, we might stop and discuss as we cover each paragraph or each of the designations here of the mudras. Yeah, let's see how it goes. Hare
Okay.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Text 15.
Yeah.
Namam dushkritina mudha prapadayante naradama mayaya aprahat gnanam asuram bhavam ashrita. Translation. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of the demons, do not surrender unto me. Purport. It is said in Bhagavat Gita that simply by surrendering oneself unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can surmount the stringent laws of the material nature. At this point, a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of the ordinary men do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways and with great plans and perseverance for great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible by simply surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hardworking leaders adopt this simple method?
Yeah, I'll just pause there. I remember this was one of the first questions I asked. I was coming to the Sunday feast and I was ushered up to questions and answers. And I've been reading Srila Prabhupada's books before I came to the temple for one of the first times. And for me, it was just so the obvious thing to do, and is to take to Krishna consciousness, and it will solve all the problems of the world. And I really couldn't understand why persons didn't do why other persons didn't do the same thing. And I asked that question. I remember it was Kesha Bharati Maharaj was there, and at the time Bala Bhadra Prabhu. And I asked this question: why is it, considering the efficiency and the greatness and the wonderful science of bhakti and the results that come from surrendering or from taking to it, why isn't it that everyone is not? So, and they basically answered a paraphrasing of this verse here. All right. So, and this is a natural question. All right. So you can read the next paragraph, Mother, and then try and if something which you notice as you're hearing it. There's only a few of us here today, but try and identify what kind of stands out, or something is not clear. Then we can discuss. But you can carry on, Mother. We'll stop at the end of the next paragraph.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The Gita answers these questions very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumars, Manu, Vyas, Deval, Asita, Janak, Prahlad, Bali, and later on Madhavacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya, and many others who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for the material gain, do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of the material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. Because material energy, nature, is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of the atheist and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions.
It's interesting what Prabhupada is exactly meaning here. Like, for example, what does he mean by this? Planning commissions, baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. This last sentence here. Can someone summarize this last sentence in their own words?
But some of them use Bhagavad Gita to get their own goal instead of surrendering. Would that be appropriate?
Well, that's definitely a fact, and Prabhupada speaks about that in the introduction, and also in the in the first and second chapter, and elsewhere as well. Yeah, for sure. But I think we could say yes, but something different here, because material energy in nature is so powerful, it can resist the unauthorized plans of atheists and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. So we see, basically, nature is very powerful. It has different aspects, which is all part of the same nature. But generally, we're surprised. Like, for example, there's wonderful, beautiful, astonishing things to be seen in nature. They can see in beautiful things in different flowers and different species of life, and the whole mechanical arrangement of nature and how it is going on, and the planets and the orbits of the planets, etc., etc. It's quite a wonder, actually. But also nature has another side as well. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis, diseases, pandemics, etc., cancers. Yeah, it has the other side. So we make so many, as Prabhupada is saying, we may make so many plans, and he describes it, the unauthorized plans of atheists. Yeah. Well, there's a famous incident which devotees often quote. It's the incident of the Titanic, supposed to be famed to be the unsinkable boat, and we all know the story. It sunk on its first mission. Yeah. So the unauthorized plans of atheists and baffle the knowledge of planning commissions. So in other words, we make so many plans, but then they don't always go to plan. And this, I remember the answer as well that Keshavarti Raj mentioned here. So persons who are claiming to be actual philosophers, politicians, and educators, they're not actually so, not from the absolute perspective. So here, these are real educationists, these are real philosophers here. Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, Kumaras, Manu, Vyas, Devala, and Madhava, Ramanuja. They are real philosophers, educationists, and scientists as well. Anyway, carry on, Mother. Any comments on it or any questions, please feel free to ask. Go ahead.
The atheist plan makers are described herein by the word dushkritina, or miscreants. Kruti means one who has performed meritorious work. The atheist plan maker is sometimes very intelligent and meritorious also, because any gigantic plan, good or bad, must take intelligence to execute. But because the atheist brain is improperly utilized in opposing the plan of the Supreme Lord, the atheistic plan maker is called dushkruti, which indicates that his intelligence and efforts are misdirected.
Okay.
In the Gita, it is clearly mentioned that the material energy works fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It has no independent authority. It works as a shadow moves in accordance with the movement of the object. But still, material energy is very powerful, and the atheist, due to his godless temperament, cannot know how it works, nor can he know the plan of the Supreme Lord. Under illusion and mode of passion and ignorance, all his plans are baffled, as in the case of Hiranyakashipu and Ravan, whose plans were smashed to dust, although they were both materially learned as scientists, philosophers, administrators, educators. These dushkritinas or miscreants are of 4 different patterns as outlined below.
All right. So Prabhupada's given a general introduction. Now he's going to get into details in the words actually used in the verse. But basically, here it's just the materialistic society or the materialistic mindset, which is so-called acting without care, without care, without worship, without care of Krishna or the Lord, without worship of him. They're trying to, as much as possible, they're trying to do away with any need for God. Yeah, and then especially Hiranyakashipu and Ravan. Was it Ravan who wanted to build a staircase?
Staircase to the heaven, yes.
Staircase to the heavenly planets. And I guess he was serious, yeah. And this is the and we're actually living, generally you could say we are living in an atheistic environment. There are some pious persons there are some religionists there, that's for sure, but generally the world is led by persons who are generally atheistic, or if they're not atheistic, they're, what's the word between atheist, is agnostic. You know, they're agnostic, and then at worst they're atheistic, you know, like Ravan and Hiranyakashipu. Right, so let's hear about them. These 4 different patterns Prabhupada describes. Let's hear.
Okay, number 1. The mudas are those who are grossly foolish, like hard-working beasts of burden. They want to enjoy the fruits of their labor by themselves, and so do not want to part with them for the Supreme. The typical example of the beast of burden is ass.
Yeah.
This humble beast is made to work very hard by his master. The ass does not really know for whom he works so hard day and night. He remains satisfied by filling his stomach with a bundle of grass, sleeping for a while under the fear of being beaten by his master, and satisfying his sex appetite at the risk of being repeatedly kicked by the opposite party. The ass sings poetry and philosophy sometimes, but this braying sound only disturbs others. This is the position of the foolish fruity worker who does not know for whom he should work. He does not know that kama, action, is meant for yagna, sacrifice. Most often, those who work very hard day and night to clear the burden of self-created duties say that they have no time to hear of the immortality of the living being. To such mudas, material gains, which are destructible, are life's all in all, despite the fact that the mudas enjoy only a very small fraction of the fruit of the labor. Sometimes they spend sleepless nights and days and nights for fruitive gain. And although they may have ulcers or indigestion, they are satisfied with practically no food. They are simply absorbed in working hard day and night for the benefit of illusory masters, ignorant of their real master. The foolish workers waste their valuable time serving mammon. Unfortunately, they never surrender to the Supreme Master of all masters, nor do they take time to hear of him from the proper sources. The swine who eats the night soil do not care to accept sweetmeats made of ghee and sugar and ghee. Similarly, the foolish worker will untiringly continue to hear of the sense enjoyable tidings of the flickering mundane world, but will have very little time to hear about the eternal living force that moves the material world.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So any can someone give a little summary of who is Prabhupada speaking about here? Mudhas.
About us.
Yes. Could you elaborate more?
Is there a need for elaboration?
Yeah, I guess there isn't a need, I guess. This is people in general. Yeah. People in general. There's no philosophical inquiry into the existential meaning of life, although sometimes they get a bit philosophical. It says here, the ass sings poetry and philosophy sometimes. Sometimes me and my friends will get philosophical. But that would be after getting drunk, after being in a pub. Then everyone would break out to these philosophical conversations, or sitting around someone's house and doing unmentionable, sings poetry. So sometimes it may be there, but generally they don't pursue it. They actually don't take it up as a life's quest. They're just so-called satisfied by working, earning money, engaging in sense gratification. Papa's quite blunt here. He remains satisfied to fill his stomach with a bundle of grass. So he's given an example of an ass sleeping for a while under the fear of being beaten by the master and satisfying his sex appetite at the risk of being repeatedly kicked by the opposite party. That's the characteristics, apparently, of asses and donkeys when they're engaged in activity. Then sometimes the female will kick the male in the head, So yeah, you could say this is not the Sudra from the Vedic perspective, because the Sudra from the Vedic perspective is a pious person who's very honest. They're very religious, but from the perspective of persons who are not interested in anything to do with spiritual life, let alone religious life, I think perhaps we could give ourselves a bit more charity. Mother Gaia said it's us. I think we could be a little bit more charitable. Hopefully we can come a notch above this. Yeah.
Well, actually, we are all working very hard. But out of some of them, some might meet a devotee, a book distributor, and then continue working hard, but come into Krishna consciousness. And even when we're in a Krishna consciousness, we have to work, and we have to work hard. But the goal changes, the outlook on life changes. Otherwise, the work hard is just like the mudas, we are working non-stop.
Yeah, very good point. I think that was mentioned. Where was it before? Papa mentioned that. What did he mention? He mentioned, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, thank you for that. Yes. Yeah, well, I can't find it now. Yes. Yeah. Anything else? Sometimes they spend sleepless days and nights for fruitive gain. Yeah, I used to know friends who used to have ulcers, stomach ulcers from their drinking, And we see this, we see here in central London and other places as well. We see like persons who are addicted to drugs, then practically they don't eat. Yeah, they eat very, they don't eat. They're more interested in the sensation they get from their drugs. And then they look as though they're on death's door. Yeah. Yeah, so we work for Krishna instead. Yeah, we work hard for Krishna. So perhaps in that sense, we have in common. Yeah, we work hard. Yeah, as Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that one has to, if one does not do his duty, yeah, then how can one maintain one's body? Sarira. How can one maintain one's body if one does not do anything? Yeah. So we have to be engaged, as Mother Vajkashore correctly said. But we're working hard for Krishna. Yeah. Not just to fill our stomach. Yeah. All right. So let's hear about the Duskriti. So that's a Duskriti. So Mutta, you could say, is the common person who has no philosophical interest or no inquiry into the meaning of life. They're just living like animals. Yeah. More or less. If there's any other questions or comments, you can continue, Mother.
Okay. Number 2, another class of Dushkriti or miscreant is called the Naradhama, or the lowest of mankind. Nar means human being and Adham means the lowest. Out of the 8,400,000 different species of living beings, there are 400,000 human species. Out of these, there are numerous lower forms of human life that are most uncivilized. The civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles of social, political, and religious life. Those who are socially and politically developed, but who have no religious principles, must be considered Naradhama. Nor is religion without God religion, because the purpose of following the religious principles is to know the supreme truth and the man's relation with him. In the Gita, the personality of Godhead clearly states that there is no authority above him and that he is the supreme truth. The civilized form of human life is meant for man's reviving the lost consciousness of his eternal relations with the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is all-powerful. Whoever loses this chance is classified as Naradham. We get information from the revealed scriptures that when a baby is in the mother's womb, an extremely uncomfortable situation, he prays to God for deliverance and promises to worship him alone as soon as he gets out. To pray to God when he is in difficulty is a natural instinct in every living being because he is eternally related with God. But after his deliverance, the child forgets the difficulties of birth and forgets his deliverer also, being influenced by Maya, the illusory energy. It is the duty of the guardians of the children to revive the divine consciousness dormant in them. The 10 processes of reformatory ceremonies are as enjoyed in the Manusmriti, which is a guide to religious principles, is meant for reviving God consciousness in the system of Varnashram. However, no process is strictly followed now in any part of the world, and therefore 99.9% of the population is Naradhama. When the whole population becomes Naradhama, naturally all their so-called education is made null and void by all-powerful energy of physical nature. According to the standards of the Gita, a learned man is he who sees on equal terms the learned Brahmana, the dog, the cow, the elephant, and the dog eater. That is the vision of a true devotee. Sri Nityananda Prabhu, who is the incarnation of Godhead as Divine Master, delivered the typical Naradhamas, the brothers Jagai and Madhai, and showed how the mercy of a real devotee is bestowed upon the lowest of mankind. So the Naradhama, who is condemned by the personality of Godhead, can again revive his spiritual consciousness only by the mercy of a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in propagating the Bhagavat Dharma or activities of the devotees, has recommended that people submissively hear the message of the personality of Godhead. The essence of this message is Bhagavad Gita. The lowest among human beings can be delivered by this submissive hearing process only. But unfortunately, they even refuse to give an oral reception to these messages, and what to speak of surrendering to the will of the Supreme Lord. Naradhamas, or the lowest of mankind, will fully neglect the prime duty of a human being.
Okay, so I think most of the purple is dedicated to the Naradhamas. Let's have a look. Yeah, Naradhama. So any comments about that? Otherwise, Kishore, you could give a little synopsis of this. Naradhama.
Well, Naradham, 99.9% of the whole population of the world is Naradhama, as Srila Prabhupada says, because nobody goes through the 10 process of reformatory ceremonies enjoined in the Manusmriti.
Yeah. I just happen to have those 10 here. I have one verse book, and about 6 years ago, I gave a class on these 10 reformatory processes, and the piece of paper has been stuck in my verse book here, and I just opened it up and it's here. So the first one is Vivaha, which is the marriage ceremony. Okay. Oh, actually, they should be the other way around. No, that's right, yeah. Then Garbhadan, the rites for conception. Then this is all prenatal. Then the Simontayanam, that's the parting of the wife's hair. That's for it's rites for safe delivery. And then number 4 is the actual birth itself, Jatakama. Then there's a subsidiary of that, which is called Nishkamanam, the baby's first outing, to see the moon, to see the sun, to see the stars, etc., to see the Lord. Then comes Nam Karana, giving of the name. Then there's 2 subsidiary ones as well for good health of the child. Then there's Annaprashan, giving of first grains. And a subsidiary is piercing of the ears as well. It's there, Kanaveda. And then Chuda Karana, which is the hair cutting, first hair cutting. Then Vidyaramba, which is when the child starts school. Then there's a ceremony for that as well. And then Upanayana, that's the initiation into the study of the Vedas. And the last one, anyone know what the last one is?
Would it be the death ceremony?
Yes, that one. We will have to do that one ourselves. And that's that. That's Anyesti Kriya, funeral. Okay. So they're the 10 reformatory processes. So Kalu Sudra Sambhava. That's not going on. It may be going on in some places in India, but generally not. But definitely it doesn't go on anywhere in the West. Although the West, there are some similes to these rites of passage within the Christian church. There may be some that's something similar, but other than that, it doesn't. And these all other than that, it's not done. Where are we? To go on flicking around here, the pages. Yeah.
Well, the Christian church has like a baby birth. We can see the queen when Princess Diana had a first baby. They had some ceremony to do with the baby.
Baptism.
Yeah, it's there, and this is all coming from the Vedic. It's all coming from originally the Vedic culture. So we're going to see some remnants of it. What's it called? It's called You know, what's it called when a baby goes?
Baptism.
Baptism. Yeah, that's it. Child is baptized as a Christian, but then later on they have to go through another process as well when they actually become younger to actually choose to submit themselves to Jesus. Anyway, so it is there to some degree. We have birthday parties. And Annaprashan, I don't think that's not there as a ceremony anyway. Our babies normally don't take heavy foods to begin with, but later on they will. But there's no particular ceremony that's celebrated. Yeah, and all these ceremonies, they're very interesting because all interwoven and connected with devotion to the Lord. The whole ceremony is focused on prayers to and submitting oneself to the Lord's mercy and grace for the well-being of the child, for the well-being of the wife, etc., for the blessings for education. So without that, that's what's being referred to here. What is it? Nada Dharma. So nada, yeah, means they're not dharmic at all. Yeah. So let's see. Out of 8,400,000 different species, 400,000 are humans. Mostly they're uncivilized. Now, the civilized human beings are those who have regulative principles, social, political, etc., religious life. Now, so those who are socially and politically developed but have no religious principles may be considered nada dhammas. So that, again, that's a lot of Western society. There's some development in regards to a social system, but generally, what's it called? It's called a secular, where God is not considered to be the prime objective. Instead, material acquisition is considered to be the prime objective, and God is not given a main place. That's called secular. And he mentions here, nor is religion without God religion. Yeah, and there's plenty of those persons who claim they're a bogus system of religious practice, but there's no concept of an actual person. Oh God. Anyway, any other comments about this? Papa gave the example. He gave yeah. That by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he gives the example of Jagai and Madai, two typical Naradamas. Now they was born as Brahmins. Yeah, they were born as Brahmins in a Brahmin society. Yeah. But they descended to typical Naradamas, yeah. But they received the mercy of a real devotee.
Nityananda.
Yeah. They became delivered. Yeah. Now the next verse is going to speak about 4 types of persons who do come to Krishna. So these are impious persons. These are persons who have no piety. The next verse, text 16, Chato Vida Bhajanti Mam, describes those who meet difficulty, but they take shelter of a Krishna. And they're also divided into 4 groups as well. Now, these 4 divisions, sometimes this is a general description. Sometimes you're going to find persons having characteristics of 2 of them, 3 of them, like that. This is giving you a general outline. All right. Perhaps it's quite a long purple. Perhaps I'll ask Mother Gaia to read a bit here from
Yeah. Where shall I start?
Duskriti. We're on Duskriti now. If I've got
3, right?
Yeah.
The next class is Dushkriti. It's called the next class of Dushkriti is called Mayaya Parthagyana, or those persons whose erudite knowledge has been nullified by the influence of illusory material energy. They are mostly very learned fellows, great philosophers, poets, literati, scientists, etc. But the illusory energy misguides them, and therefore they disobey the Supreme Lord. There are a
Excuse me.
great number, bless you, there are a great number of Mayaya Parthagyana at the present moment, even amongst the scholars of the Bhagavad Gita. Bless you. In the Gita, in plain and simple language, it is stated that Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is none equal to or greater than him. He is mentioned as the father of Brahma, the original father of all human beings. In fact, Sri Krishna is said to be not only the father of Brahma, but also the father of all species of life. He is the root of the impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. The supersoul in every entity is his plenary portion. He is the fountainhead of everything, and everyone is advised to surrender unto his lotus feet. Despite all these clear statements, the Mayaya Parthagyana deride the personality of the Supreme Lord and consider him merely another human being. They do not know that the blessed form of human life is designed after the eternal and transcendental feature of the Supreme Lord. All the unauthorized interpretations of the Gita by the class of Mayaya outside the purview of the Parampara system are so many stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual understanding. The deluded interpreters do not surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, nor do they teach others to follow this principle. 4. The last class of Dushkriti is called Asuram Bhavam Ashrita, or those of demonic
One
principles.
second. Sorry, I was on mute then. I was speaking away and
You want to discuss on this? Yeah.
muted. Well, just a little bit here, just gonna so we'll kind of know go following. So the first one is the more or less the people in general. You could say we gave that title of Sudras. Yeah, they're just satisfied with working hard like asses, satisfying their senses, Then we have those who are living, those who they have a regulated social system, a regulated political system. Yeah. But there's no, they're not inclined and not inspired at all to follow any religious principles, to have any concept of God, although they have some. These are mainly, you could say, these are humanists. You heard of humanists? This is persons who have a philosophy that you can be good without God. You can have a structured society. You can have a well-meaning society without the need for invoking God. Yeah, they're known as humanists. They have a regulated life. Yeah. In other words, humanist means just depend upon the human, and there's no need for God. Yeah, you could say that. And then now we just looked at the inquisitive, those who are scientists, etc., and they come to their own speculative conclusions. Yeah, that they, in their brilliance, the knowledge is stolen by illusion. Is that how it's described? Mayapata Gehana. Yeah, they may be scholarly, but their knowledge is nullified by the illusory energy. And there's many of them out there, make big speeches, the so-called intelligent, etc., etc. Now, of these four, they're progressing in their fallen state, so to speak. So it gets to the fourth one here. All right, so we hear about that, the fourth one, those who are Asurim Bhavam Ashrataha. So these are now going to more demonic side, yeah, where they openly decry or they openly preach against religious principles. Anyway, let's read about it. Hare Krishna. So you can continue reading.
Yeah, shall I read? Okay. 4. The last class of Dushkriti is called Asuram Bhavam Ashrita, or those of demonic principles. This class is openly atheistic. Some of them argue that the Supreme Lord can never descend to this material world. but they are unable to give any tangible reasons as to why not. There are others who make him subordinate to the impersonal feature, although the opposite is declared in the Gita. Envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the atheist will present a number of illicit incarnations manufactured in the factory of his brain. Such persons, whose very principle of life is to decry the personality of Godhead, cannot surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. Sri Yamunacharya Alabandaru of South India said, "O my Lord, you are unknowable to persons involved with atheistic principles. Despite your uncommon qualities, features, and activities, despite your personalities being confirmed by all the revealed scriptures in the quality of goodness, and despite your being acknowledged by the famous authorities renowned for their depth of knowledge in the transcendental science and situated in the godly qualities. Therefore, 1. Grossly foolish persons, 2. The lowest of mankind, 3. The deluded speculators, and 4. The professed atheists, as above mentioned, never surrender unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead in spite of all scriptural and authoritative advice."
Right. So just as Devi Isha Gunamayi, Mama Durataya, Mom Eve Papatyante, Mayam Etam Tarantite. Yeah. We can overcome this material energy by surrender to Krishna. But many people don't. And they fall into one or more of these categories. All right. Now I'm just going to read something here. It goes into quite some descriptive words. This is from Shita Swami. Prabhupada is generally Prabhupada is using here. You read this from Shita Swami, the way he describes his people. Prabhupada is being quite charitable here, although he's condemning them. But here, just read this section. Why then does not everyone worship Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord? This verse tersely answers the question in describing because they are duskritino or miscreants, wretches among human beings, because they are so incorrigible, they do not take refuge in the Supreme Lord. So incorrigible means they refuse to follow advice. You cannot change them. Yeah. They refuse to take refuge of the Supreme Lord and offer devotion to him. What is the cause of their wretchedness? It is because they are in ignorance and bereft of discrimination. Why are they ignorant? It is because they are wicked and sinful. Therefore, those who are deprived of discrimination due to the absence of spiritual knowledge from the holy preceptor arising from the teachings of the Vedic scriptures are conscripted by Maya's illusory impressions superimposed upon the mind and engage themselves in despicable and deplorable diabolical activities. Subsequently, they assume a demonic attitude which has been described as pompous, ostentatious, aggrandizing, arrogant, conceited, egocentric, perverted, cruel, and vulgar. Such miscreants never even have the opportunity to worship the Supreme Lord. All right, so that's from Shita Swami. So he goes back about 600 years. It's his commentary on this verse. So such persons were around then as well. Now, there's one thing. Now, reading this and hearing this description, we don't want to become like what we see in some manic street preachers, who are, you get the idea? We don't want to become like, we don't want to be looking down on people. We shouldn't think ourselves so proud, and yeah, we shouldn't come across as condemning people. So it's important to keep this in mind, because this is the that's the preaching mission of some religious, zealots, so to speak. That for them, everyone else, I could say it's quite evident today, where if you may not be a part of one religion, then you should be killed. Yeah. Anyway, any comments on that? So we have to be, you know, although we understand this, okay, namam tuskadana mutta papajanti naradama maya putagana asaram bhavamashutaha. It's not that we go on the street and say, you're all miscreants, ashurim bhava shritaha, surrender to Krishna, you know, you maya putagana, you know, duskrita, you're going to hell. We don't preach like that, you know. We preach from the platform of compassion. Because actually Mother Gaia said that we are not, perhaps we ourselves are not far from some of this here. That's to be considered as well. But we want to help people. You know, we want to help them. We want to encourage them and not to condemn people. Yeah, that's not, so we may speak quite strongly in the class against atheists, etc., against Mayavadis, but we are not of the mood of openly and antagonistic to a people. Yeah. Any comments on that? Any?
Prabhu, if all the devotees, I mean, most of the devotees, they would have some like slight quality of Naradhamma or Maya Apartha Gnan, some, you know, some little quality there.
Yeah.
And that has to be eradicated, but it's there because we are, after all, we belong to this place where 99% people are fallen.
Yeah, and there's something I read today, actually. I just try and, well, it's funny you should say that. I just read it today, so I'm going to pull it out. Yeah, I'll just read here from this. Gradually, it was this is someone who wrote, this person, he's a religious philosopher, and he's quite well known. Gradually, it was disclosed to me that the line of separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart. And through all human hearts, the line shifts. Inside us, it oscillates with the years, and even within hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. And even in the best of all hearts, there remains an unuprooted small corner of evil. Since then, I've come to understand the truth of all religions of the world, at least from his perspective. They struggle with the evil inside a human being, inside every human being. It is impossible to expel evil from the world in its entirety. This is a quote from another philosopher. But it is possible to constrict it within each person. Right? Interesting. It is impossible to expel evil from the world in its entirety, but it is possible to constrict it within each person. All right. So yes, what Mother Brajkishore is saying is correct. Yeah, there is a demonic side to us. Yeah. But at least we're trying to constrict that. You know, we're trying to act in a devotional way. Yeah. And as we continue chanting, then less that will be there. But still there may be something there until we reach stages of perfection. Yeah. Anyone else? Any comments on that? But thank you for that, Mother Rajkishore. Any comments upon that? All right. So that was. Now this verse, Prabhupada quotes so often. Actually, this verse, I learned this verse without even learning it because I heard it so many times from Prabhupada in his lectures. He uses this verse so much in his lectures, more than most devotees will do. Prabhupada was quite unrelenting when he was preaching, actually. He would use his verse a lot. Namam tuskana mutta papajanti nadam maya putagana asadam pavamashrata. So Prabhupada was quite outspoken about persons who didn't surrender to Krishna. but in his personal dealings, everyone he met with, he was very kind. In one sense, he'd be heavy with people, but he wouldn't, because Prabhupada, because he's a devotee of the Lord, then he sees Krishna in everyone's heart. So therefore, he would treat people. He'd speak quite, to some, he would sometimes speak quite heavily, but they didn't get the idea that Prabhupada was antagonistic towards them. He was doing it out of loving compassion. So Prabhupada he would use this verse a lot. All right, so let's pause there. Tomorrow we're going to look at this verse. This is the 4 kinds of persons, as I mentioned, who do come to Krishna. Yatatuvada vijanti mam jana sukritina arjuna acha jignasi atati ganicha paradashapa. So the 4 kinds of pious men who do come to Krishna. So we'll look at that tomorrow. So there's only a few of us here today. But anyway, have a look at this verse before tomorrow and try and identify what stands out, particularly in this verse. Any questions you may have, anything that's confusing, or what's going on in this purport, and we'll have a discussion, tomorrow. Okay? So thank you for joining us. Hare Krishna. And Gaura Premanandi, Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Praise Malamala Prabhu ki
Hare
jai.
Krishna.
Vaishnavi ki
Krishna.
jai. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Kripa